Hello guys, welcome back to SF Multimedia. I'm Arjun Kapunda and today I'm going to give you guys my top 5 favorite movies of 2020. Now, in 2020 we haven't got many amazing blockbuster movies, but there were a few movies that I personally really enjoyed. So, with that said, obviously you guys have some movies that you really enjoyed. So, be sure to give me your 5 best movies of 2020. Obviously, we're gonna have different lists. You've seen different movies, I've seen different movies, you've resonated with different movies, and I've resonated with different movies. So, we're gonna disagree, and that's the fun part. So let's compare our lists and let's have a lively discussion down in the comments below. With that said, I'm gonna get started with a few honorable mentions. So my first honorable mention is gonna be V. Now I think V is a really good crime thriller. I think going into it, I thought it was just gonna be an action movie, but it was more crime and action. I think the movie had some really good characters. I thought the villain was really good. I really liked the main plot of the movie, so I really enjoyed it. It's not quite top 5 material because after I watched it, I just never feel the urge to rewatch it. Next up, we have Wonder Woman 1984. Now, this one has been pretty divisive since it came out. I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. I can't quite say it's great, I think it's just good. Now, you might be like, why do you have a good movie on your honorable mentions when it's not great? Well, that's because this movie came out in 2020 and there weren't many awesome movies that I saw in 2020. So I think Wonder Woman 1984, it is getting a whole lot of hate compared to what I thought it was going to get, but I personally really enjoyed it. Next up, we have Cellular Knicker. I think this is a more comedy-esque movie. I think that's what really brought it up into my honorable mentions. Or did stay low. I don't think the main plot of the movie is that compelling. I don't love the characters. I think our lead character is really good, but other than that, I think the rest of the characters kind of fall flat. And I do really think some of the action scenes are really good, but there's very few amazing action scenes, but still, I think most of the action really works here. And finally, we have Honest Thief. I think Honest Thief is just a really good movie. I think the story is really good. I think our character is really likable. And obviously, I think Liam Neeson gives a really good performance in the role. So with that said, now let's move on to my actual top 5. At number 5, I have The Call. This is a Netflix original that I don't think many people have actually seen this movie. But when I saw it, I really enjoyed it. I think the movie had some really good stories and characters. I think just the concept of someone in the past calling someone in the future, I think that's just such an interesting concept because it could be done in many different ways, especially when it takes place in different times. So in this movie, it's the person in the past is in 1999, and the person in the future is in 2020. Well, at least I think, because that's when it got released. But yes, I think the movie just really handles that concept really well. And I think throughout the movie, it shows that it used the time difference to make this movie. Because as the story goes on, our main two characters starts to become friends. And in the first half of the movie, it's just a fun ride, just seeing them becoming friends, bonding, and exchanging ideas, gifts, and all that. So I feel like that's just such a fun idea. And when you move on to the second half, the movie just starts to become you're in fear, you're afraid of what's gonna happen because our character in the past, she's gone on a rampage, she's killing people and all that. So it just really shows how well made the movie is. I really recommend this movie to anyone unless you don't like violence, but I really like this movie. And number 4, I have The Invisible Man. Now when I first saw this movie, I think I actually had it at number 2, but it did kind of drop. I'm not saying this movie got worse. I think just the ones on the ones that are higher, I think they just got better. But still, I still really enjoyed this movie. I think the main story of there being an invisible man with a suit, obviously, I feel like that's just such an interesting concept. Because, again, this could also be done in different ways, because it could mean different things. In this movie's case, we have a person that wears a suit, and it has cameras on it and screens, so the cameras record everything, and then the screens play it, so it doesn't look like anybody's there. So I feel like it feels realistic, just the concept of that suit. So it's like you could create it in a sense. So I feel like the movie does that really well. But like just the main story, I think when in the beginning where we have this girl who escaped from this person, and he keeps haunting her. And throughout the movie, we try to understand, is he actually haunting her or no? And then we actually have the invisible man and all that, and it just starts to feel really dreadful and just scary. I think the movie handled some of the CGI. It barely has any CGI, but the CGI of the invisible man himself, I think it works really, really well. And I think almost everything in this movie is really good. Honestly, can't imagine not liking this movie, because I think the CGI is really good, and I think the movie actually uses just open space really well. Because when we have open space, the invisible man, he could be anywhere. So I think it just handles that really well. And finally, I really like our lead character here. I think the cast here gives a great performance. Kicking off my top 3 is gonna be Soul. Now, when I watched Soul, I actually had it at number 1. It did kind of drop, not because it got worse, again, just like The Invisible Man, just the ones above got better. So I think this movie it did 5 things really well for me. The first, it made me like the characters a lot. I think our main characters, 22, and obviously Jamie Foxx's character, I feel like as I went into the movie, I started to like them like almost immediately. And I think as the movie progressed, their character development, I think that worked really well too. The second thing, I think the movie, it just does a really good job of like celebration of life. I think that's what this movie is mostly about. It's a celebration of life, like about finding your true purpose and all that. And then I think the movie just gets really creative with a lot of stuff. I think just the pre-life and post-death, I think those two worlds, I think it just handles those two things really, really well. And as you go into the movie, the animation style looks beautiful. I think New York in this movie is like looked amazing. I can't like probably the best New York looked in a movie. And the fourth thing, I think it did really well. It got me thinking. Like, very few movies do that. Like, it gets you thinking, what if this is how this works? Like, I actually thought for a while that's what pre-life and post-death looks like, because the movie just does a really good job explaining it. And the fifth thing it did really well was it came on the perfect time. Because 2020 was a year that was like filled with bad, dark stuff. And we have this movie that closes out 2020, and it just tells you to look on the bright side. I feel like the movie it did all those 5 things really, really well. And just the main story, the characters, the creativity goes through, I feel like it's amazing. And I'm honestly surprised that this still isn't at number 1. I still really love this movie. I recommend everyone to watch it. And number 2, I have The Way Back. This movie, like, it wasn't on my radar at all. I didn't watch it almost until like last minute, like before making this video. I think this movie, what it did so well was our main character. I think at the beginning he's just an alcoholic, and as he goes through the movie, he starts to like be more more like a normal person. He starts to care about things. He starts to have like feelings, and I think throughout the movie they just show it really well. And like just we have him coaching a basketball team, and when he gets kicked out, he actually cares about it, which is just some powerful stuff, because at the beginning he didn't even want to coach the team. and and then when he gets kicked out, by the end of the movie he gets over it. He's not obsessing over the thing. And I really like that they didn't bring him back into coaching the team, because I feel like that's how the movie becomes more powerful and shows things. And I think the way they ended the movie with him actually shooting basketball, because he hasn't played basketball in a long time, so I feel like that's some really powerful stuff. And I think just his redemption throughout the movie, I think that works really well. And I think this is another one of those movies where you just feel motivated, and it just really does a good job of that. Now, I think what really holds this movie back from my number one is that this kind of genre. I like it. I'm not saying I don't like this genre, but it's just not my favorite genre. But my number one movie is. So with that said, I'm gonna give you guys my number one. So coming in at first place for me is gonna be Extraction. Now, going into this movie was basically designed for me. First things first, it takes place in India. Well, a part of it takes place in India. I'm from India, so that automatically pulls me in. And then obviously, Marvel. I think Marvel Cinematic Universe, my favorite franchise of all time. This movie has a whole lot to do with that, like the cast and crew. Chris Hemsworth, he plays Thor in the MCU. And then we have Joe Russo. He wrote the script for the movie. He directed Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. And obviously that pulls me in too. Next, we have Sam Hargrave. He directed this movie. He's the stunt double for Captain America. So, like, this movie was basically designed for me. In action is my favorite genre. So, like, out of every movie in 2020, this movie was, like, basically pointed at me. So I really like that. So that's basically what got me into watching the movie. And I think I really enjoyed the movie. First things first, because it's an action movie, it has amazing action. Probably the best action in 2020. Because 2020 didn't have many movies, and out of the movies that it did, this movie just has some amazing action scenes. So we have this one take action scene that's just really good. First we start off with the car chase, and then it moves on to them trying to escape, and then we have Chris Hemsworth just beating up guys. So I feel like that works really well. I think our characters, our main two leads, are like really good in this movie. I think Chris Hemsworth and the kid, I think both of those characters, as they progress, I feel like they start to develop a bond. And by the end of the movie, our main character, he's ready to sacrifice his life to save the kid. I feel like that shows a lot of character development, because at the beginning he's just doing it for the money, and now he's ready to sacrifice his life for doing it. So I feel like the movie really, like, it pulls me in when it gets like character development, emotions, and all that. And obviously has great action. I think a lot of people actually complained that this movie has a straightforward narrative. I'm honestly fine with that. I feel like straightforward action movies, that's kind of my thing. If the movie has good action, good characters, I can get over the fact that the story is pretty simple. I honestly don't have a problem with that if the characters and action is really good. So my favorite movie of 2020 is Extraction. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to give me your list down below. What are your favorite movies of 2020? We're obviously going to have different lists, like I said. We've seen different movies and we've resonated with different movies. And if you want more content like this, please subscribe to SS Multimedia, and you can check some of those videos out right over there. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.